years ago, SMSL Audio released one of the coolest DACs of that moment, the VMV-D1SE, which had everything it needed to succeed: the right price point, the right component selection, the right build quality and looks, and also it sounded great. 1 year later, they came up with what I believe was the nicest SMSL DAC, the SU10, which doubled almost everything except for the price, of course. It had dual linear transformers, one for the analog section, one for the digital section, a much beefier output stage. Everything was much better. Now we have a spiritual successor to the SU10, which is called SUX, which by the way stands for SU10 in Roman numeral system. The price went up from $899 to $999 US, but it seems about right considering that inflation rate went up by 12% this period. So let's check it out. Design-wise, from all hi-fi makers all around the globe, there is only one manufacturer that is constantly changing the look of the devices. That, my friends, is SMSL Audio. Personally, I don't like constant changes because you are basically ruining your brand identity, and I need to know that I'm looking at developing at an SMSL DAC, Gustav DAC, but with SMSL that will never happen because they are constantly changing the look of their devices. If you ask me, their SU10 was the GOAT in terms of looks and build quality, and SUX is not that far away from that one. We have the same footprint, the same metallic fit with silicone inlays, the same CNC machined aluminum case. The only thing that changed was the misaligned glass panel. The surprising part is that SMSL also released a headphone amplifier slash preamplifier that has the same chassis, with the exception that it has a smaller screen. Why? I know it's nitpicking on my part, but having identical screen sizes would make a lot more sense to me. It doesn't have a complicated UI, but it's a complex one, with the volume knob or the remote control working as menu navigators. We have a colorful screen on its left, which I wish was slightly bigger, so I could see the lettering when using a stereo at a substantial distance. On its back, you'll find every possible digital input like USB Type-B, Type-C, optical, coaxial, AAC, I2S, and even Bluetooth antenna socket. There's a pair of RCA and XLR outputs, and both can be controllable or fixed, depending on the settings. As for tech inside it, there are several parts which I like with every cell in my body, and just one thing which I dislike. And starting with the great parts, we have two linear transformers, one for the digital section and one for the analog section, which is common practice in high-end audio applications. These are not some no-name transformers, but Norratel transformers, so specifically selected for audio applications. They also went with two pieces of ES9039 Pro flagship ESS Sabre silicone. They also decided to use all their channels, so 8 channels per chip or 16 channels in total, paralleling every 4 channels for a lower noise and for a higher dynamic range. SMSL did the same thing with their SU10, but that one rocked 2nd generation flagship ESS Sabre silicone. This one rocks 3rd generation ESS Sabre silicone. The only part I kind of dislike is that we have 21 dual op-amps that will generate more heat and inject more noise. Compared to SU10, which also had 21 op-amps, we now have a beefier noise filtering system. I see 9 caps instead of 6, so that is already an improvement. All in all, this looks like a slightly updated version of the SU10, rocking newer DAC chips, a slightly better power supply implementation, which should lead to a decent improvement sound-wise. Sound-wise, as you can already expect, SUX is a slightly updated version to that SU10, and even if measurement-wise it's slightly better, sound-wise it sounds very similar, if not really identical to the SU10, and that is a good thing in my book because SU10 is no longer selling, and I know many of you are still wanting to try that, the best sound that SMSL has to offer. Now, if you watched my previous video for that Gustav X30, then you should know that SUX can be seen as a mini version of the Gustav X30. We also have 2 linear transformers, one for the digital section, one for the analog section. We also have a beefy output stage that exchanged those discrete components with 21 op-amps, but the overall sound signature is very similar. So paralleling every 4 channels from 16 available lowered the noise and improved channel separation. So even if we are dealing with a smaller than usual DAC that doesn't occupy lots of desktop space, it doesn't sound like an entry-level or mediocre DAC, and more like what would you want to use for a very long time. First of all, the sound just oozes resolution and detail, and without a single doubt, this is the cleanest sounding DAC that SMSL had to produce up until this point. So it's incredibly clean sounding. You can hear everything that is happening on the micro scale, everything that is happening on the background, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, that you can hear without a problem. The information that it pushes forward is impressive, and if all you need is a resolving DAC that doesn't mess too much with the tone and timbre, then SUX feels overqualified for this job. It's important to mention that SUX is not drying up the mid-range section, so this one cannot be described as clinical or as flat sounding, boring sounding. I don't get any of that, so I still think this one is quite vivid, quite punchy, quite alive sounding and engaging in a single word. In this regard, it reminds me about some of the nicest ESS Sabre DACs that I have tried around here, like Gustard X26, like X30, so it has very similar technicalities, but of course it's not exactly as stampy, as dynamic, or as alive sounding like those two beasts. I also like that SMSL Audio is offering 2 options for the I2S input, so normal mode and inverted mode. So I can use this one with my Roon server, the Rockna WaveDream Net, and it sounds better when you feed a proper clean signal from a really good digital transport. So if you want the best results from this DAC, then I do recommend a wired streamer or a dedicated digital transport, because it will be sounding considerably nicer. The stock digital filters that ESS Technologies implemented in all their chips are present in here, but those don't make a difference whatsoever, because those are dealing with the treble roll-off above 20 kHz, so no, there is no difference whatsoever. However, we have sound color options that were developed by SMSL Audio that will make a small difference. From all the presets, I like Tube the most when listening to acoustic music, and when headbanging on rock or electronica, then standard preset seems like the most accurate, that doesn't mess with the pace of the music. The part where SUX impressed right away was the note separation, the void spaces in between the notes, the sharpness of the stereo image, and also the soundstage in both a head-fi battle station and also a stereo rig. So of course it will not outplay the big guys like the Gustard X30 or like those massive R2R converters that will cost you an arm and a leg, but it will outplay something like a Gustard X18 topping D90, D90 third generation, its siblings D400EX and DO400, the FiO K9 Pro ESS and AKIM variants. So usually the size of the room is shrinking considerably with such converters. The notes are starting to bump into each other, so losing some definition and some sharpness, but that is not happening with SUX, and I do believe in this regard and Soundstage this one is actually quite an impressive converter. Going a little deeper, without a single doubt, the most impressive part about the SUX is detail retrieval or resolution. It so happens that SMSL Audio also sells pricier and much pricier converters like VNVD2, like VNVD3. I tried them both in my system for several months, and even those are sounding closer to the real thing, having a thicker tone and timbre, those cannot compare with SU10 and SUX in terms of detail retrieval and resolution, and the difference wasn't really minuscule. If you like hearing things that you're not supposed to, like imperfections, like mastering errors, like things moving in the background, like a guitar amp powered on or any other intricacy, then SUX renders all that without flexing a muscle. This is a detail-oriented DAC in the true meaning of the word, without getting into the clinical, analytical or dry sounding territory. It never highlighted the treble output more than what it should, and I do believe it's sat under a strict control, pushing detail retrieval up while drowning down brightness and treble glare. Moving on to dynamics, this is where those 21 op-amps are starting to dance in sync, and I'm pretty sure that the dual power supply system also gives a substantial helping hand. So this one is honestly outstanding in terms of impact and speed. It's very thumpy, it's fast sounding, it's lightning fast, it's very nimble, so it does justice to electronica, hip hop, dance, pop, modern music. It's really outstanding in this regard. It covers the frequency response in full, and everything felt really energized and everything happens instantly basically. The only thing that it doesn't do so great is trying to slow down on slow and mellow music, so this would not be my top choice for acoustic stuff, for big orchestras, for live music, for acoustic music in general, for vocals. It's not that great because it cannot slow down and show you those beautiful long decays. So the violin will decay much faster, the voices are decaying much faster, it's not sustaining all that energy. So this is basically the only gripe, the only thing that I don't like about this one. The tone and timbre is okay, but the music is just decaying a little bit faster than what I would like to have. It's not a perfect unit for vocals, and this could be its Achilles heel. Overall, dynamics are mighty impressive, but the tone and timbre and no decay could be improved in the future. If you plan on using it in a stereo setup, then you should go with an integrated amplifier, and if you are using power amplifiers, then you should invest in a preamplifier because this one doesn't have one. If you want a recommendation from my part, then you can go with their SHX preamp/headphone amplifier, which creates a pretty neat stack. And there's an audible difference when both are playing as a team versus the SUX alone, and that mainly has to do with tightness, control of the music, note separation, and how much energy is coming out of your speakers. For a near-field setup though, the SHX is no longer needed, so please act according to your needs. Moving on to frequency response, if we are talking about bass control, bass definition, bass depth, then this is where SUX is excelling. Even compared to something like Topping D90 SE, that one is flatter, is not so punchy, is not so alive, it's a little bit boring sounding. This one has more substance, more oomph, more thump. You can feel that pretty much easily, not only with your ears, but with your body as well when listening in a stereo setup. I was listening to the newest album by Airbag, which by the way I wholeheartedly recommend if you are a prog rock listener. The first track is simply a masterpiece. We have a very long bass line from the start right up until the end, and at the 6-minute 10-second mark there is a very strong bass guitar shredding that is so powerful and so pleasing at the same time. And you can feel it basically with your whole body, not only with your ears. And that was very pleasing and really strong and controlled at the same time and clean with the SUX. All in all, the SUX does a proper justice to the bass region. And if you are into prog rock, then you must hear the newest Airbag album. The unusual part is that SUX also brings forward a little bit of naturalness. It sounds a little fuller bodied compared to the Topping D90 SE and Gustard X18. I'm pretty sure that vinyl heads and tube aficionados won't get impressed because it's not exactly buttery smooth or warm or sweet sounding in here, but at the same time it's not lean or dry sounding. A hint of naturalness and warmth is still present that makes aggressive rock and metal manageable for an hour or two, so in the end it's mostly nitpicking on my part. The treble is the standard ESS Sabre affair with lots of crispness, cleanness, definition, but without getting that nasty digitus, that fake ringing, that entry-level converters are putting on the plate. As you can expect, as a hardcore rock and metal fan, I'm very into this region treble. It's very important to me. So it's not about how clean, detailed, sharp, but also how powerful and how visceral this region can sound. And I do believe that SUX has a perfect blend of technicalities and also energy delivered in the treble. All in all, SMSL fine polished the frequency response for a wider target audience. So it's no longer ultra linear, but livelier, fuller bodied in a way, skills that music lovers tend to appreciate a lot more. Wrapping up this story, if I would nitpick a little, then that would be about heat generation. 21 op amps are generating lots of heat, and it seems that the lateral heatsinks are not helping that much. I measured 49 degrees Celsius with a Bosch infrared thermal detector, which is around 120 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's a little higher than usual. And if you plan on getting that SHX headphone amplifier slash preamplifier, then that one is even hotter. Make sure to put them in a well-ventilated area, and if you still want to stack them, then make sure to put some isoacoustic packs under both units for a better ventilation. We also have this plasticky remote control, which I don't believe does justice to the SUX or the SHX. Also, I want to say that VNV D1SE, which was cheaper, and also the SU10, which also were cheaper, both came with aluminum CNC machined remotes, and I do wish these two came with such a remote as well. Apart from that, SMSL audio didn't economize on the parts quality, and that was reflected in the sound performance that I just described, because this one is not just technical but also quite engaging, so it's not only for snobby audiophiles but also for music lovers. At this point, Apos Audio is selling this one for $999 US, which already feels like a great bang for your buck. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. My name is Sando, and I'll see you very soon with that SMSL SHX review. Cheers!